So any questions that you have from brothers or sisters or guests alike, please, don't be shy, because I'm not. Yes?
What made you convert to Islam?
What made me convert to Islam? Well, we need another talk for that. We really would. I became a Muslim when I was 17 years of age. This is when I used to live in London. The beauty about Islam that attracted me, to be quite honest, was just its simplicity, and the fact that the message was quite clear, quite easy to understand. We have this concept of Islam called the fitrah, how you're naturally born and what you are naturally inclined to. And when you go to a human being and tell him, worship God and don't worship anything alongside him, I just found this message quite attractive. I also find quite attractive the fact that in Islam, you worship no one but God. There is no other human being that you worship alongside. If you were to come and tell me, worship this man, I could never become a Muslim. But the fact that, it is a simple message of just worshiping God, it's something that was, quite attractive to me, and I believe attractive to a lot of people as a concept. Any other questions? Brother.
You say that Islam is an all-encompassing and all-embracing religion.
Yeah.
But how is that the case when, if you are, say, a homosexual, you can be killed in Islam? If you're an apostate, you can be killed in Islam. And in Islam, women are somewhat oppressed to a certain extent. So how can you say that it is all-encompassing and all justifying and bringing everyone together when it excludes, well, arguably at least 50% of the world's population, arguably more?
It's a good question. I like challenging questions like that. Let me start by your last point. Islam is what? Against women?
It's oppressive against
It's oppressive against women. Can you please substantiate your argument? How is Islam oppressive towards women?
In many ways, they are forced to wear the veil. They are.
Let me stop you there. Okay, any sisters here, when any of your husbands force you to wear a veil? Please put your hands up if you are forced to wear a veil and you don't wear a veil because you yourself just want to wear it. Look around you. I don't know any of these sisters. I don't know the majority of them. So that proves my point. So this fact that this myth that you have that we force our women to wear a veil, this is incorrect.
But women are the property of their husband.
Women are the property in where? In what religion? Islam or Christianity? Let me tell you something. Do you know when women... Hang on. You asked your question. Let me answer. Do you know when women were given the right to inherit in the UK?
1918, initially 1920.
Do you know when women were given the right to inherit in Islam? Over 1,400 years ago. And you're telling me women are property? You need to get your facts right. So, also you talk about homosexuality and? Apostasy. Islam has the same view as Christianity and Judaism when it comes to homosexuality, and I think that's enough said there.
But I'll criticize Christianity and Judaism for the same.
You can criticize however much you want. That is that's your creed, that's how you believe, and that's how you see the world, and I respect that. But Islam doesn't take an approach that's any different from any other of the monotheistic religions, which make up the majority of the world.
Even if that's the case, that still seems wrong. It seems wrong that you can be a homosexual man and be in love with another man, and an intermediary force can decide that love is somehow not valid and not encompassing and not accepting.
That is nothing to do with Islam per se. Your issue is with any religion that believes that homosexuality is incompatible with their religious faith. This is not something to do with Islam per se. As I said, Islam has the same core belief that a marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, if someone decides to live their life as a homosexual, this is their choice. Islam doesn't go around, trying to say, if you're homosexual, we're gonna, do such and such to you. Islam says that, we believe that, a partnership is between a man and a woman. Now, if you don't believe that's right, we respect that. But, this is how the majority of the world sees the partnership between two people. So again, I'm not trying to defend Islam here. This is just how the majority of the world sees it. And I make no excuses for that. As for apostasy, Islam has a very clear concept. Allah says in the Quran, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. Islam says, "O you who disbelieve, to you is your," basically the summary of it is, to you is your faith, and to me is my faith. Islam has a concept of, لا إكراه في الدين. There is no compulsion in religion. So if you want to be a Christian, if you want to be, a Jew, if you want to be a Hindu, if you want to be, if you want to apostatize in Islam, this is up to you. Islam doesn't go around saying, okay, we need to force you to become a Muslim. I mean, the door is still open. We're not going to force you in here and force you to convert to Islam.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you're a Muslim and decided that I no longer wish to be a Muslim, under the Islamic text, it is justified to kill you for apostasy, for trying
Okay.
to...
Can you quote, what Islamic text are you quoting from? Tell me.
The Quran.
Go on. Quote it.
Sorry?
Quote it.
I can't exactly...
You can't. Okay. So when you can, please let me know. Where Islam tells you that if you decide to apostatize, we need to actively try and search and kill you. You need to get your facts right. Islam gives you the freedom to practice a religion or leave Islam. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't consider you as a major sinner if you leave Islam. Make no excuses for that. But Islam doesn't go around actively trying to search and kill you, search and destroy you just because you've left Islam. Understand this, Islam has a concept of God being self-sufficient and not needing your worship. In Islam, we believe that it is you as a human being, or it is us as human beings that need to worship God. God doesn't need our worship. So we believe that you benefit by worshiping God, and you lose that benefit if you don't worship God. You alone. If everyone in this earth was to worship God, this would not elevate his status by one bit. And if everyone was to stop worshiping God, this would not, downgrade his status by one bit. God doesn't need your worship. It is us that need to worship Him. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Why was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the last prophet?
Why was he the last prophet? So it's a good question. The Prophet ﷺ was the last prophet, and the proof that he was the last prophet is that because the legislation that he came with, the Quran, encompassed every aspect of human life. If you were to compare Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which is a comparison that I don't like to do, because these are two great prophets of Islam, and we don't differentiate between prophets and try to say that one is better than the other, or so on and so forth. But Jesus was a prophet, a messenger. The Prophet ﷺ was a prophet, a messenger. But Jesus wasn't a father. Was Jesus a father? Was Jesus a husband? Was Jesus a statesman? He wasn't. The Prophet ﷺ was a father, was a husband, was a statesman, and from this we derive many rulings on how to treat, our parents, both father and son, how to treat our children, how to rule an Islamic state. Understand that Islam, the Prophet ﷺ came not only with, this concept that we have in other religions to be a sort of a holy person. Islam is a very practical religion. From the moment you wake up, it governs every single minute of your life. Not in a bad way, but it just gives you a path to follow. Do you understand? And the Prophet ﷺ, his life, is a reflection of that. And therefore, that's why he was a final messenger, because his life encompassed and touched every part. I mean, even economic affairs. Islam has, a whole system, devised around, Islamic, law with regards to economic affairs of an individual. So Islam encompasses every part and every corner of life. It isn't just about be someone nice and come to prayer on a Friday. It is much more than that. It is really very much a religion that touches you, from morning till evening. More questions?
Are only 25 prophets mentioned in the Quran?
Why are there only 25 prophets mentioned in the Quran? Because Allah, God sent, thousands of prophets. There's only so much you can write in a book. So, it was God's will that He decided, to mention, certain prophets and omit other prophets. But, as you might know, who was the prophet who was mentioned the most often in the Quran? Does anyone know? Was it the Prophet Muhammad? Prophet Musa, Prophet Moses. So Moses, where people would think, oh, hang on, is Moses part of the, Judaism? So how comes he's mentioned mostly in the Quran? Because Islam, as I said again, has this concept that every prophet, came with the same message of Islam and, the obedience and worship of only one God. So a prophet that's mentioned mostly by name in the Quran is the Prophet Moses. Any other questions?
Just out of interest, how many times a day do you pray, and are they different? How does it work?
So we have 5 obligatory prayers every day. And just to give you the current timings, they vary according to the day. So it's basically one prayer just before sunrise, which is called Al-Fajr prayer. Right now, Fajr prayer, it's just shy of 5 o'clock in the morning before. Then we have the midday prayer or the midday prayer, which is around at the moment around 12:30. The timing starts. Then there is the afternoon prayer, which is called Al-Asr prayer, which is the mid-afternoon prayer. Right about now, it falls around 4ish. And then we have the sunset prayer, which we call Al-Maghrib prayer, which is the one we just had just before we came into this talk, and that's why I was a little bit late. And then it's called Al-Maghrib prayer. And then we have the final prayer of the day, which is in about 30 minutes, and it's called the Isha prayer. So these prayers vary, depending on the season that we're in. So they vary depending on when the sun sets, and when the sun rises. So sometimes these prayers are quite close together, sometimes they are further apart. But they're a fundamental principle of Islam. In Islam, we don't have a concept of a non-practicing Muslim. Either you're a Muslim and you practice, or you're not a Muslim and you don't practice. There's no such thing as a Muslim that doesn't pray. Either you're a Muslim and you pray, or you're not a Muslim. This is when it comes to Islam with prayer, it's that black and white. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Do they have different purposes throughout the day, for different reasons?
No. So no. The purpose is the same. Fundamentally, the same purpose of the worship of this one God. These are the obligatory prayers. There are other prayers that have specific purposes. For example, there is a prayer specifically, for rain. So that's not something that we need to worry much about in Northern Ireland, of course. Asking for rain. So, but you find that in a lot of parts in the world there's drought or whatever. There's this prayer called istisqa. There's a prayer, to ask for rain. There's a prayer of fear. There's a few other types of prayers. Prayer, for example, when there's a lunar or solar eclipse. For example, there are specific prayers, but these are, punctual prayers. The 5 daily prayers, the same concept, just the worship of this one God. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? You're making it far too easy for me. Only one dear guest asked me, a challenging question.
For those people, I obviously don't believe this, but for those people who, they see on the news, particularly with terrorism and different acts and kind of different political, religious figures throughout the world, they might believe Islam preaches hate or particularly violence. To those people, particularly the violence part, because we see all these horrible terrorist attacks on the news. So for those people that believe that Islam embraces these bad qualities, what would you say to these people?
You're supposed to be on my side. Yes, unfortunately, that's the media that we have. That's what I call them, fake news. Unfortunately, Islam has been branded, or certain Muslims certainly have been branded as terrorists, by the mainstream media. Some people believe the world's terrorism started in 2001. You know, people think that the world started in 2001, so Muslims are the only, or some so-called Muslims are the only terrorists in the world, right? Well, the world didn't start in 2001, and you know, a few lunatics, can't or shouldn't have been allowed, to tarnish the name of a religion. You know, there's lunatics in Islam, and I'm sure there's lunatics in other religions. But going back to what you said in a more serious note, Islam is a religion of peace. You walk around every day. Do you see Muslims chasing on the street with a sword? You don't see that. You don't see Muslims actively trying to kill other Muslims or Muslims trying to blow up other people. This is a minority of people that have gone astray, as people go astray in any other religion. The unfortunate thing is that the double standards that we have, that when a Muslim, or so-called a Muslim, goes and commits an act of terror, a despicable act of terror, he's immediately branded, and rightly so, as a terrorist. The problem that we have is when other people from other faiths commit a similar act, they just call him a murderer. And we've seen this, just happen in New Zealand. This individual that committed the act of terrorism in New Zealand at the mosque, thought it fit that he should also film them. I class this as a terrorism, but he was charged with murder. And I say, why the double standards? So we ask nothing but, that, standards are fair. But again, Islam is a religion that was spread by peace. I'll give you an example. Indonesia, the most populous country where Muslims live in the world. Indonesia, no blood was shed for Islam to be spread. It was purely done through, initially when people went there to do tijara, when they went there to do business transactions, and more than 100 million people became Muslim as a result. It wasn't through bloodshed. Islam ruled very close to here. For those who enjoy their holidays in Spain, you obviously know that Islam was there for over 800 years. And I still see the remnants of Islam in the south of Portugal and the majority of Spain to this day. It wasn't ruled with an iron hand by forcing people just to go into the religion. So going back to the point that the other dear guest said there, Islam doesn't impose upon you the religion. You have a freedom to choose what you choose. We don't say that you're going to end up in paradise, but we're not going to certainly go around chasing you and trying to kill you as a result. And the people that do these things should be, believe you me, that the people that are recipient of this terrorism, the people who are most affected, the people that are most killed by these acts of terrorism are Muslims. Make no mistake. The majority of people killed as a result of terrorism in the world are Muslims themselves, are not, people from other faiths.
Thank you.
Yes, brother.
Can I say in Arabic, my English is not strong.
Go on.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لقد سمعت أن هناك ناس كثيرين لا يعتقدون الإله ويقولون العالم خلقه الطبيعة. فهل هناك دولة من العالم أو شركة من الشركات تزعم أنها خلقت الشمس والقمر والجبال والأرض وما إلى ذلك؟ هذه واحدة.
طيب خلينا واحدة. طيب.
أين نجد معلومات كثيرة عن الإسلام إذا أردنا أن نبحث؟
في ثالثة كمان؟
أيوة. لماذا المسلمون يؤمنون موسى وعيسى ولا اليهود ولا المسيحيون لا يؤمنون المسيحيون لا يؤمنون موسى ولا محمد واليهود لا تؤمن عيسى ولا محمد والمسلمون لماذا يؤمنون كلهم؟
5 أسئلة.
3.
Okay, the dear brother Saeed, mashallah, may Allah reward you for your efforts. for those non-Arab speakers in the room. So basically, he's asked a series of questions. The first of which was, there is a concept out there that that the world was created or created itself, out of nothing, without a creator behind it. Possibly the concept of the Big Bang Theory. I don't know if that's what he's referring to. And he's asked that if there is a company out there or there is a country out there that claim that they've created the sun, you said?
Yes, and moon, and earth.
Okay. No, look, Islam, the fundamental core belief of Islam, as I said, Brother Saeed, is that, even if there was a Big Bang, someone must have sparked this Big Bang. Islam never goes against science. Islam embraces science. If you were to look at the miracles of the Quran and the description of how a baby is formed in the womb over 1400 years ago, to basically pagans, which the Arabs were back at that time, and the intricacies of how that was created. Remember, these people are nomads. They didn't know any such scientific concepts as the heavens and earth. All the Arabs were known for was poetry. Yet, if you look at the Quran, revealed over 1400 years ago, you'll find scientific fact after scientific fact after scientific fact. It has never been, until 2019, a scientific fact, a proven scientific fact that goes against the Quran. So the Quran embraces science, it doesn't go against science. In fact, this is one that brings to the question that sister asked me earlier. One of the things that made me convert to Islam was the fact that Islam puts you at rest. You want to be a scientist, you can still become a good Muslim, because the two do not go against each other. The two, in fact, embrace each other. You've asked a few other questions there, mostly of which I've now forgotten, but I don't think they were too relevant to the talk, Brother Saeed. So maybe I'll talk to you back in the mosque, over a cup of tea. Okay. So yes. So any other questions? عن الإسلام. Jamil, this is a good question. Where do we find the details, or can we get to find out more about Islam? Let me first tell you where not to find information about Islam is on forums that have a specific message that they were trying to drive, drive through the people. And some of these forums can be quite misleading. Some of these social media pages spread nothing but hate. I'd say if you really want to know about Islam, talk to Muslims. Just talk to the Muslim next to you. And if that Muslim, in Islam we have this concept of knowledge being everything. The person that holds knowledge in Islam is always the most powerful person. So if you go to any Muslim that you study with, or that you work with, or that and you ask them a question about Islam, and they don't know, the first thing they're going to tell you is, let us refer it back to someone who has knowledge. So that is it, refer back to a human being that has knowledge. That would be my first thing. If you know of no Muslims in your vicinity, then one of the best places to go is to go to your local mosque. Here in Belfast, we have a mosque called Nympha, which is down by the Rugby Road, just behind Queen's University. And we have another mosque called Belfast Islamic Center. Both these places are open to non-Muslims. A mosque isn't a place of prayer for Muslims only. A mosque is an Islamic center where all are welcome, at any time. In fact, we have on a daily basis, or almost on a daily basis, schools from Northern Ireland, kids coming in, people from all kinds of faiths and backgrounds, politicians, anyone. The door is always open at a mosque. So just walk into a mosque, and say, I want to learn more about Islam. Or to the person that's next to you, a Muslim, ask him, if they can give you, some literature. There is some literature, a lot of literature out there, but I strongly advise you to take everything that you take from the internet with a pinch of salt, because it can leave you completely deviated, and until you meet people of Islam that have real knowledge, you might actually have a completely distorted view of Islam. So thank you, Brother Saeed. That was a good question. Any other questions? Yes, sister.
So I think a lot of misconceptions about Islam come from the fact that cultural aspects have been incorporated into the religion. So what can we do to get rid of those like cultural beliefs that we have and focus solely on Islam so that we're representing the religion as well as we should?
It's a beautiful question. For those who might not have heard, the sister is making a point about, some of the, Muslims or some Muslims that might follow Islam, but Islam in a way that is, more traditional or originates mostly from their country. So you might find someone, for example, from a Muslim country, not following what we quote unquote pure Islam, if there is such a thing, but putting elements of their own tradition into it. And all I say to individuals like that is go back, to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Go back to the ways of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The message was all inclusive. The message was for all humanity. The message wasn't, a message for a specific people, like I said. So I invite all Muslims that whenever, proof is put before you of any aspect of Islam, always be ready to embrace it, open-heartedly. Don't ever say, oh, because I am from such and such a country, my people practice Islam in such and such a way, therefore I'm just going to do what my forefathers did. And for anyone that has read the Quran again and again and again, Allah always mentions, those who followed on their father's footsteps. Islam is going to judge you on your own in the day of judgment. It's going to be you and God. It's not going to be you and your father and your mother or your messenger. It's just you and God, and that is judgment. So therefore, stay away from trying to, incorporate, items that are nothing to do with Islam into the religion. And if anyone tells you, brother or sister, this isn't according to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and they give you proof to substantiate their argument, you should just say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey. Yes, brother.
Can you talk about, sorry, I'm forgetting my own questions here. Can you talk about forgiveness in Islam, the vastness of forgiveness and Allah's forgiveness? And for example, if you, Umar bin Khattab said, if you sin in a certain place, to do something good in that place, and
sorry, what did you say about the place? I didn't hear that.
Sorry, Umar bin Khattab said, if you sin in a certain place, like don't leave that place until you do a good deed in the same place. I don't know if this is an authentic hadith or it's. And also, can you speak about like self-reliance being sort of, I don't know, financially independent or, self-reliant in every way? And also, sorry?
Are you Saeed's friend? No. Saeed, is this your buddy? Can we take that first question one at a time? So, and at least I won't forget. Just give me a second here. Let me know, because your first question, was a very important question, a beautiful question. God has many names. You might have heard me throw the name Allah, and I think a lot of non-Muslims sometimes are thrown by this name. Allah. What is that? Is that a Muslim God? Is that I remember when I sat here as a non-Muslim, and people told me about Allah, and it just felt the concept felt very distant. But God has many names, and one of His names is Ar-Rahman. And also Ar-Rahim, the most forgiving, the most merciful, the creator, Al-Khaliq. So God has many names which is known by. One of these names, is used in the beginning of almost every chapter of the Quran when opening up, a chapter. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most forgiving, the most merciful. You open the Quran, the first thing that you're going to read is that. So this is the introduction of God to you. Now God has other names, but He has chosen to introduce Himself through the majority of the 114 chapters of the Quran by saying, in the name of God, the most forgiving, the most merciful. So God is a merciful God. In Islam we believe that God forgives all sins except one sin. Does anyone know what sin God doesn't forgive? Sundus, you can't answer because you're my daughter. You probably know the answer. Go on.
Shirk?
Shirk, very good, excellent. Your son is very good, excellent. So remember I said that God believes, or not God believes, that we believe that Islam is all about the concept of worshiping God alone. This is the only sin that God doesn't forgive, is that you worship anything else alongside Him, any partners alongside Him. This is the major sin in Islam that God doesn't forgive. So if you come in the day of judgment, in the hereafter, with the sins, the signs of this world, and you have repented for those sins, God will forgive you all your sins. God is a forgiving God. Whatever those sins were. But what He won't forgive is the fact that you didn't worship Him alone. If you worshipped another deity, another human being, anything else alongside Him, and your worship wasn't purely for Him, this is a sin that God doesn't forgive. So this is the only sin that God doesn't forgive in Islam. You asked about self-reliance. I'm not sure that really has to do much with the topic that we have here today at hand. And what you said about Umar ibn Khattab, Umar ibn Khattab, for those who don't know, was the second Khalifa, the second leader of the Muslim world after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in this case, again, I'm not sure of the authenticity of what you just said, so maybe we'll take that offline, brother.
My last question is, let's say in the future something bad is going to happen to anybody, and if they do good deeds, does that block that out and stop it from happening? And finally, how do you change your destiny?
If in the future something's bad is going to happen, but can you prevent that by doing good deeds today?
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of things that you can. You see, the concept of Islam is that you are sent here for a reason. This is the beauty of Islam. Islam gives you a purpose. You weren't created just to have fun, to have a good time, die, and then whatever else is going to happen. Islam sent you here with a clear purpose. It tells you what that purpose is. And that purpose, every Muslim, the 1.6 billion Muslims share this purpose, which is you are created for the worship of God. This is what you are created for, according to an Islamic belief. If you believe that, fundamentally, that you are created for the worship of God, this gives you a purpose in life like nothing else that you've ever seen. It gives you a clear goal. Where you're going to, because you know why you're here. Because if you were to ask most people in the world, what is the purpose of your life? Why were you created? Most of these very deep questions, people normally don't tend to take their time to think about. Islam gives you that answer from the onset. So that you know why you're here. You know you're created for a reason. And you know that God not only created you for His worship, He also created you and put before you tests. Because if you figure, if paradise was easy to get to, everyone would be in paradise. So the concept in Islam is that you are sent here and God will test you. He will test you by putting before you challenges. These challenges, some are smaller, some are greater. But whatever happens, you will be challenged and you will be tested. You will be tested to see if you are worthy of entering Jannah, of entering paradise. If you pass these tests, then you enter paradise. If you don't, well, we all know where the other place is that isn't paradise. So to that effect, going back to your question, doing good deeds, or trying to change your destiny is impossible, because in Islam, and it's impossible, quote unquote, because there are some side issues that are quite advanced, not for a basic class like this, but for the majority of the part, no, you can't change your destiny in Islam, because we believe in pre-decree. We believe that you are created, you have free will, right? But that Allah knows already what your free will is. So if you were to tell me, okay, I know that when I finish this lecture, I intend to walk out of that door and I intend to go to the mosque. In fact, I intended to do that 10 minutes ago, right? But, does Allah know that this is what's going to happen? Or that you intended this? Allah knows this before you knew it. It's not that He's commanding you to do it. It's that you are here to find out your destiny. Not that God is telling you to commit a sin or be good or forcing you to do these things. You have your will to choose what is good and what is bad. And then you are, rewarded or punished accordingly. So you have a free will, but that free will is always known by God. If you follow me. Again, the concept of pre-decree is an advanced topic that requires further explanation and probably wouldn't be conducive to a talk on introduction of Islam. So if you want to go into depth into pre-decree and predestination, this is one of the 6 pillars of Iman, of faith. We talk about the 5 pillars of Islam, there's the 6 pillars of Iman. And one of them is a belief in predestination and pre-decree. But again, it's a more of an advanced topic. Yes.
In regards to food, are you allowed to eat takeout from places that don't specify that their meat is halal?
Yes, that's a good question. In Islam, we're allowed to eat, as some of you might know, some of you might know from, if you're not Muslims, we normally eat halal food. What does halal food mean? It effectively means that you sacrifice an animal, and when you sacrifice this animal, you sacrifice it and you say Bismillah in the name of God, and you let, it's done, by letting the blood, gush out of this animal. The same way it was always done for thousands, probably millions of years. This is what makes the food halal, makes it, allowable for you to eat. Now this isn't something new to Islam. This is something common even in Judaism, where they have kosher food, or Christianity. For the majority of the times, only recent times they employ more modern methods of electrocuting the animal, or hitting the animal in the head and let it pass away. So Islam believes you can't eat dead meat. So to that effect, Muslims have developed this branding normally that you see in Muslim shops, showing that it is halal, that it is allowable and permissible for you to eat of this food. Can we eat from places that don't show that sign to say that it's halal? Yes, we can, if we know that there is halal food in there, right? But if we don't know, even eating food from the Christians or from the Jews is allowed in Islam. وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ وَطَعَامُكُمْ حِلٌّ لَهُمْ. So quoting scripture, and the people, and by the way, Christians and Jews are mentioned in the Quran as the people of the book, because they were both sent, with the holy book. So Allah says here, وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ, and the food of the people of the book is permissible to you, وَطَعَامُكُمْ حِلٌّ لَهُمْ, and your food is permissible unto them. So we are allowed to be invited by a Christian family or a Jewish family and eat of their food, like we're allowed to eat from halal food. Now what we're not allowed to eat is dead meat, which is effectively what happens when you kill the animals the way some other methods are done, or meat, and there's some other things that I don't want to go too much into how do you go about slaughtering an animal, because not everyone here would like to hear that. But effectively, yes, you can eat it even if it doesn't show the branding of halal, if you know it is halal and the people that are selling it are halal. And if it's non-Muslims, then you can eat of their food if you know that their meat is sourced, I would like to quote unquote the old school way, the way normal farmers would do, slaughter their chicken or slaughter their sheep, the old school way, and they let the blood basically run out. Then in these conditions, then you can eat from the food of the Christians and the Jews as well. Can we leave it there, or are there any more questions? One more question?
In relation to messengers, also ourselves as messengers, I'm looking around, there's possibly 80% non-Muslims here. How could we, as messengers, spread that message of Islam to non-Muslims in the best way possible, especially in light of New Zealand?
Absolutely. Great question. So how can we spread the message of Islam, in its correct light? I say the best way to spread the message of Islam is by good manners, right? And with love and with knowledge. Manners, love, and knowledge. Why do I say manners? Because I don't believe that that Islam has to be forced upon anybody, as I've already mentioned. I believe that a Muslim can't just say I'm a Muslim and not practice what he preaches. So you need to be an embodiment as a Muslim of your religion, wherever you are. you know. So you can't just, be nice in certain quarters, and then whenever you deal with people, non-Muslims specifically, that's what we're talking about here, and not show them, really the good manners that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us. So always be, upon the Sunnah, always be upon the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is always the best manners. And we know that the manners of the Prophet ﷺ were the best of manners. Allah mentioned this also in the Quran. So that's regards to manners. Your manners are key to opening, the doors to Muslims, to even want to know, non-Muslims, to even want to hear about Islam. Love feeds from manners. People, tend to take knowledge or tend to take information from those who they like. So if they dislike you, or if you're trying to enter into debates with them or trying to demeanor them in any way, I for example, when I became a Muslim, or before I became a Muslim, I had a completely distorted view of Muslims. In fact, I wasn't very nice to Muslims. Maybe you didn't know that, but I wasn't very nice to Muslims before I became a Muslim because of what I was fed and because of the way some of them behaved. It was so bad, But there's this concept in Islam of you need to dissect between Muslims and Islam. I entered into the Muslim faith, into the Islamic faith, not into the Muslim faith. So you need to be an embodiment of that religion through your love that you share with people, kindness. Show them the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and they will want to inquire. But if you're harsh with them and you don't show them that love and that kindness, they're naturally going to be drawn away from you. And thirdly, knowledge. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is everything in Islam. Everything. There's no such thing as a Muslim that, that doesn't have knowledge. A Muslim needs to have knowledge of his religion. You need to know what Islam stands for before you call to Islam. It's important that we learn our religion properly so that when non-Muslims approach us, and ask us questions as challenging as, what the dear guest said there, that we understand where we stand, and give them an answer that is, according to, to the authentic texts that we have before our hands. So knowledge, love, kindness, and good manners. That's what I would say is an advice to our brothers and sisters when calling people to Islam.
As our guest had a few questions, can he approach yourself, or can he come to the Islamic Center to...
Oh no, we don't welcome people that think, no. Of course, he's welcome, and I believe that, that, again, people that have taken, knowledge about Islam from sources, surely, and I am sure this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't a Muslim that you've met on a one-to-one that told you that Islam stood for this.
It was not some Muslim doing it through reading ex-Muslims and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so you did this by, assumption, reading what you read on the internet, probably, maybe from some other literature as well. But it surely wasn't from a Muslim scholar or a Muslim student of knowledge, which are the pillars of the community. This is where we get the knowledge from. So I would say that, the questions that he's asking, are no more different than, no more, difficult than if a woman was to ask me, difficult questions about women in Islam. And I welcome those questions because I believe that if you want to know Islam, if Islam really is the truth, it needs to have an answer to your questions. It needs to have an answer, otherwise it isn't the truth. It needs to have an answer to your questions. So the brother is welcome, the Belfast Islamic Center, 38 Wellington Park, anytime. If you want to talk to me on a one-to-one basis, absolutely. I stood where you stood as a non-Muslim before, and I know what it's like to look from the other side. A lot of the brothers and sisters that were born in Islam, they don't know how to see it as from another angle. But I know where he's coming from, and absolutely not offended at all. And in fact, I'd welcome him to come to the mosque and talk to us about Islam.